Welcome to this on-demand CPD session, Empowering Year 2 Success, Preparing for the Occupational Specialism in Health. The purpose of this session is to provide clear practical guidance to help you navigate the challenges of Year 2 delivery and to ensure your learners are fully prepared for assessment success. A key reminder, Year 2 is entirely focused on the occupational specialism. That means your teaching will now shift from general knowledge building to deep applied practice aligned to professional behaviours. By the end of February, all performance outcomes must be fully delivered and embedded, and learners need repeated exposure to the skills, language and expectations that they'll be assessed on in March. This year is about more than content. It's about preparing learners to demonstrate competence confidently, safely and professionally through technical application and assessment readiness. Let's explore how to make that happen. So what makes Year 2 different? So the demand increases significantly. Learners are now expected to engage in deeper, more technical learning and complete assessments that mirror the expectations of real-world healthcare roles. This means that they won't just be recalling information, they'll be applying knowledge in realistic scenarios. With this in mind, there is an expectation of greater independence, professionalism and maturity. They need to take ownership of their learning, reflect on their performance and make confident decisions under pressure. And as teachers, our roles evolve too. We become facilitators and coaches of performance, guiding learners to build habits, refine techniques and meet professional standards through regular practice and feedback. Year 2 is about more than learning. It's about becoming ready for the role. The performance outcomes are cumulative and build towards the final synoptic assignments. Using the backward design approach, where teaching starts from the demands of the assignment, helps you plan more intentionally and embed the required skills early. So let's dive into the heart of Year 2 delivery. The 6 performance outcomes are performance outcomes that are the bedrock of the occupational specialism. Everything you teach in Year 2 and everything your learners are assessed on comes back to these outcomes. So what are they? First, let's look at the 3 core performance outcomes which all learners must complete. So performance outcome 1, assisting with an individual's care and well-being. This might involve tasks like helping with mobility, hygiene, nutrition or emotional support. Performance outcome 2, assisting with clinical or therapeutic tasks. For example, helping with wound care, preparing equipment or monitoring medication routines. Performance outcome 3, undertaking physiological measurements. So we're talking about things like temperature, heart rate, respiration, blood pressure. These performance outcomes don't live in isolation. They are part of every learner's journey, no matter what specialism they choose. They form the foundation and we need to build strong understanding, habits and confidence in these areas early in the year. Learners next will complete the 3 options performance outcomes, which depends on their occupational specialism route. For example, a learner following the mental health team will explore therapeutic communication, mental well-being strategies, and working within multidisciplinary settings. Someone in the therapy team's options will focus on rehabilitation, activities, supporting therapy sessions, and mobility intervention. Those in midwifery, nursing, or children and young people routes will encounter different balance of care, observation, and support techniques, all shaped by the specific demands of the environment. Now the key here is integration. You'll be likely teaching both core and option performance outcomes side by side. So we suggest using a thematic delivery. So thematic curriculum design. For example, a topic like infection control can be taught across performance outcome 1, 2 and 3. Learners could role-play a personal care scenario where hygiene is critical, as in performance outcome 1. Then move into preparing sterile equipment, performance outcome 2, and finish with taking and recording temperature accurately, performance outcome 3. You can build confidence by starting with more structured practice early in the year and gradually reducing scaffolding. Begin with you modelling the process, then move to pair work, and finally independent application during simulations. Encourage learners to bring the real world into the classroom. If someone has encountered a care planning meeting or supported a challenging patient during placement, that's gold. Ask them to anonymise the details and present it as a mini case study. Their peers can then map it to the performance outcomes and assess how they would have responded. Also, don't forget the power of reflection, which is especially critical for A3, the professional discussion. From the start of the year, build regular reflection points into lessons. What did you do? What performance outcome did it link to? What went well? What would you change? Let me give you a quick example. So during placement, Sophie supported an elderly patient who was feeling disorientated and anxious. She used calming language, remained at eye level, and contacted the nurse in charge to escalate. When reflecting later, Sophie linked this to performance outcome 1 and 2 and explained how she supported both emotional and well-being and therapeutic care. Simple reflections like this, done weekly, will prepare learners for professional discussion more effectively than a cram session in February. So to summarise, know your performance outcomes inside out. Integrate them through themes and realistic activities. Use learner voice. Placements, reflections and scenarios are powerful tools. Start early. Don't save performance outcomes for the last minute delivery. The performance outcomes aren't just a tick list, they are your roadmap. Use them to plan, teach and support confidently across the year. So now let's explore the assessments in a little bit more detail. So the first assessment is A1 or assessment 1, the case study. In this task, learners are presented with a real-world scenario and are asked to apply their understanding of all 6 performance outcomes. They are expected to analyse the situation, justify their decisions and propose appropriate care interventions. This isn't about recalling facts, this is about applying knowledge. The assessment looks at how well learners can make practical decisions, explain their thinking in a professional context and structure their responses clearly and effectively. So how to prepare for assessment 1? Start with weekly case study tasks, using scaffolding at first, then gradually removing that support. Teach learners how to structure their responses, using models like the career framework or even Gibbs where relevant. Use past briefs and sample questions to model whole class responses and develop confidence. Encourage learners to write from different viewpoints, whether that's the patient, the support worker or the lead nurse, to deepen their empathy and awareness of professional roles. By building up these habits early, learners will be far better equipped to respond clearly, confidently and appropriately when the real case studies arrive. Now for A2, the practical tasks. So a series of real-time observed activities that allow learners to demonstrate their skills in action. This assessment covers both the core and specialism specific content, focusing on areas like therapeutic care, infection control, communication, observation and escalation. Learners are assessed on their ability to perform key healthcare tasks safely and effectively, show confidence and accuracy while following protocols, act professionally, especially when escalating concerns or interacting with others. So to prepare for A2, set up simulation stations that mirror the kinds of tasks learners will complete. Use peer-assessed role plays with simplified versions of the A2 mark scheme, so learners become familiar with what good looks like. Provide checklists and structured rehearsal to build consistency and reduce anxiety under pressure. Most importantly, revisit the A2 criteria regularly. Embed the assessment language into everyday practice so that the learners internalise expectations well before the real thing. This assessment is about more than ticking boxes. It's about showing competence, professionalism and readiness to step into a real healthcare environment. The final assessment is A3, the professional discussion. This is structured evidence-based conversation where learners reflect on their own practice using a portfolio they've built throughout the year. Importantly, they must use the Gibbs reflective cycle to guide their thinking, moving through stages like description, feeling, evaluation, analysis, conclusion. This assessment looks at how well learners can reflect critically on their experiences, justify the actions they took and identify how they could improve, demonstrate professional values, decision making and the application of prior learning. To prepare for learners for A3, introduce weekly reflection activities using the full Gibbs framework. Encourage learners to capture evidence continuously, including logs, witness statements, and even annotated photos. Run mock discussions with structured prompts like, tell me about a time you supported a distressed patient, what would you do differently next time and why? And most importantly, teach learners how to speak with confidence, clearly linking their evidence to decisions and demonstrating maturity and self-awareness. With regular practice, learners will enter A3 ready to reflect, not to rehearse, showing authentic insight into their growth across the specialism. So now let's take a step back and look at the year as a whole. So on here we're going to have a look at an example of a potential timestone and key milestones. What does a high impact managerial year 2 delivery model look like? So in this example, in autumn part 1, so between sort of September, end of October, begin with PO1 and PO2 alongside the optional PO1. Start building familiarity through low-stake simulation and routines like clinical observations, communication checklists, and basic documentation tasks. For the second part of the autumn term, add in performance outcome 3 and finish option performance outcome 2 and 3. Increase the challenge, mini case studies, live role play, and practical decision making. Begin building mock evidence folders. In spring, in the first part, this is your rehearsal window. Deliver full mock assignments for A1 to A3, give detailed feedback, let learners redraft, retry and reflect, make it safe to improve. And in the second half of this spring term and then into the summer term, assess. Controlled assessment begins. And because you've embedded assessment fluency along the way, learners should feel ready. A golden thread throughout this model is early embedding of communication, escalation, documentation, and clinical thinking. If these aren't second nature by January or February, assessments become a scramble. Start embedding from day 1. So now let's explore some teaching and learning strategies. So to bring the performance outcomes to life, embed a variety of strategies that help learners connect classroom teaching with real-world expectation. So what does this look like? Learning stations. Rotate students through skill tasks such as recording vital signs, documenting observations, and reflecting on scenarios. For example, one station could simulate a basic health check, while others ask learners to review a mock patient chart. Formative assessment stations set up short rotating tasks modelled after assignments A to 1 to 3. One station could involve responding to a case study under time conditions like A1, while the other could involve a peer-reviewed discussion based on placement experiences, mirroring A3. Using placement as curriculum. Encourage learners to record real scenarios they encounter during placement and bring them into the classroom. For example, they could use anonymised case notes from a patient interaction to practice responding in the style required for assignment 1. And next we have simulation tasks or scenario based. So for example, a student receives a referral form and must prepare to collect a blood pressure reading. In the simulation, they perform the measurement using correct technique and record findings on a patient chart. The student then reports back to a supervisor, played by tutor, using structured communication and justifies any further actions needed. And finally, project-based learning. Learners engage in a multi-week project where they develop a care plan for a fictional patient with evolving needs. Weekly challenges include research, observation practice, risk assessment, and peer feedback. The final project submission mirrors assignment 1 with a full case study and rationale for care decisions. So these approaches create realism, promote repetition of key behaviours and allow assessment readiness to build gradually through familiar formats. So now let's explore building that assessment fluency and student confidence, which intrinsically link. So formative assessment should train learners for the real thing. Instead of write your observation, try record observation using precise language and accurate units. This demonstrates application and supports higher band performance. Assessment should never feel like a surprise, so build fluency over time. Use the language of the assessment criteria in your teaching, align formatted tasks with the format of A1 to A3, and scaffold technical writing and reflection using models like Gibbs, STAR or Career. Don't just say, write what you saw, instead say, record your observations clearly using professional terminology. This supports that application and moves towards that higher band. So building this student confidence, it's also part of our teaching role to support student well-being. Now, practical assessments can be high pressure, especially when the smallest error can affect results. Support them by normalising errors as learning, what went wrong, what did you do next? Include well-being prompts in logbooks, what felt hard today, what am I proud of? Use short debriefs after mock assessments to rebuild confidence, structuring pre-task visualizations or breathing routines. A confident learner is one who feels safe to learn from their mistakes. Now, there's a lot of support available to you to really help support you and your students' success. You have the Chief Exam Report, Student Exemplars, upcoming CPD sessions with myself, YouTube channel and your YouTube playlist. You're building the next generation of health support staff. So let's help them become not just safe and accurate, but self-aware, adaptable and assessment ready. So before we finish, we'd really appreciate a moment of your time to give us some feedback. Please scan the QR code or use the link provided to complete a short form. So the link's on the screen and it will also be in the description below this video. It helps us understand what's working and what we can improve so we can keep delivering sessions that support you and your learners. Just to remember to include the title of the session, Empowering Year 2 Success in T-Level Health. So this brings us to the end of Empowering Year 2 Success. Thank you so much for your time and engagement today. We hope this session has given you some practical tools, insights and inspiration to support your learners through the occupational specialism in health. As always, we're here to support you, so please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great rest of your day and thank you again for all that you do.